Welcome back to my Amped 2 Own the Mountain guide. In this video, we'll be going to Mount Hood and finding the snowmen, doing the gaps, and maybe even covering one of the tricks. Since this is the first level where there is a Stomped It landings requirement as one of the tricks, you need to get 2 Stomped It landings in a run, and I know that those can seem kind of variable, very finicky, and sometimes you don't understand where to really get those easily. So first, we're actually starting at the top, at the cauldron drop. That's because the run from the very top of the mountain that you unlock actually takes priority as the first drop point. The first snowman is pretty close to the start of that, and then kind of stay in a straight line, and you'll see a snowman in kind of that collection of rocks, that sort of basin, if you will, near the back, but not yet behind the basin. So just take it slow, don't go for a big jump with that media guy, instead go around, and there's the snowman we'll collect from Cauldron Drop. So next we'll move to the Glacier, and of course any of these could be collected from Cauldron Drop as well, but if we can spawn closer, why not? We head down the first part of the park area on Glacier until we come to this sort of section, and there's a snowman hiding between the left and middle jumps. Then kind of curve over to the middle section, but jump over to the right section in a way to collect that snowman there. If you stay to the very right and try to turn around the rock, you actually won't be able to. But keep following that section down, and on the left side, on a jump fairly far down, is another snowman. And so that's the ones that we collected during this run here. Alright, we got 5 of 8, and we're going to spawn back at the Glacier because there was actually a snowman very close to the first one we collected. Ride down the park, run again, and stay just kind of on the left side of it, and you'll come to this big jump, this sort of big set with a setup that you'd think more in like a motocross track than a snowboard park. But again, hiding behind a big lip that you might go to trick off is another snowman that you should slow down and not jump over this time. But keep riding down that middle path afterwards, and then there's a snowman up on a rock between that middle path and where you can jump over to the right. And yeah, if you think that I missed that snowman, I totally agree with you. But that's 7 of 8, and those are the ones we could collect from the Glacier. So now we're going to head over to Rock Garden. Once again, you could have gotten this from Cauldron Drop, but it's right up here near the start. And just like a lot of other Mount Hood snowmen, this one thinks that you're gonna trick right over it. It's just behind that first big hump. However, if you try to go for it in kind of a straight line, the geometry, the rock geometry, will really kick you around. So what I found you should do is ride around the side, get some good speed, and then curve back in. I could have actually curved in earlier and not had to ride so far uphill. You see I lose my speed a good bit. But curve around, collect your 8th snowman, and dominate the Mount Hood snowmen with that final acquirement. So for the gaps, we're starting back up at Cauldron Drop now, the first listed drop point, getting the gaps that are up near the top of the mountain. And these gaps on Mount Hood will suddenly require you to have a good amount of big air and ollie stats kind of across the board. This first gap, if you've done the Photo Shoot 3, is that jump, and it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. But then we continue riding down, and once again we get to where Rock Garden starts. That's the first hump of Rock Garden, and another gap will be in front of that. This is just kind of a jump to landing area. Like, what do you guys think of some of the gaps we've seen? In my mind, a cool, awesome feeling gap is one where there's a very clear takeoff point, but also landing point that feels like you cleared some big distance or just came down on the right side of some obstacle. Again, think of motocross, where all of those supercross tracks are about getting the right jumps, going off the upside and landing on the downside of all of the elevations. Whereas some of the gaps you'll see in this game feels like the landing points are kind of arbitrary, and they could have found bigger and cooler opportunities in the levels. Now this gap specifically does kind of put you on the back side of that rock, and also that one specifically, you will need a lot of big air and ollie stats, a surprising amount, more than you think. You might have to back out and put some board points into those if you're not able to make that jump. Now real quick, as we go to the glacier next, I'm also going to show off some footage that might help in stomping the landing, because once you have higher big air and ollie, and especially higher spin and flip, a good way to try and get some easy stomped landings is to find some steep slopes, some kind of elevation changes like these smaller jumps at the start of the glacier, and go for corkscrews or rodeos. Just a quick kind of hold of the control stick and then jump, spin around, release, and hopefully you will be able to stomp it a few times, the number of times you need, whether it's 2 or 3 or then 5 near the end of the game's case, to work with that challenge. But yeah, kind of those smaller jumps, those elevation changes where you can do a quick rodeo or corkscrew might be some of the easiest way to get some of the stomped the landing tricks. Now that fourth gap also wasn't that bad. This fifth gap though did take me a while, and that's because again you need to keep a good amount of speed going. In fact, you'll see that I kind of go to the right of a rock that's in front of the lead up to keep more speed than I would have otherwise if I rode to the left and had to ride up the slope to get to the ramp. But yeah, that one might take you some attempts. It is a bit finicky. On the subject of gaps as well, what do you think about them as a way to discover new lines throughout a level, or perhaps see areas you might not have seen otherwise? Because that does seem to be a secondary reason for them. Sometimes they're in obvious spots, but in other times they ask you to trick off of something you might not have thought about tricking off otherwise. So kind of what do you think about them in that regard? Maybe that should be their main purpose. But anyway, Mount Hood, the snowmen can be tricky because you're inclined to fly over them, and some of the gaps can require a surprising amount of stats. But that level's over with, and next time we're going to go to Locks 1. I hope you enjoyed, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.